Greetings and good evening, my dear fellow weeps. As always, my name is, of course, Sugi Shogun, and today I have the great pleasure of once again reviewing yet another anime. This is from the year 2016, and it is no other than Re:Zero, starting life in another world, or in Japanese, Re:Zero Kara Hajimeru Isekai Seikatsu. And this was an anime that I wasn't watching when it was airing back in 2016, even though it was very popular. It still is extremely popular series now that the second season is ongoing, which I'm planning to review on time once it finishes, instead of waiting for 4 years. And I just had a lot of things going on, and I didn't really have time back in 2016 to watch it. And I did get a lot of recommendations and people saying to me, this probably would be a show that you would like, and I will tell you were they right or wrong in a second, but before we jump into the actual review portion, I do want to say that there will be one kind of minor spoiler revealed in this review, which is happening on the very first episode, and it's kind of like one of the key things about the whole anime itself. I don't think it's that major of a spoiler, but it kind of may ruin the first episode experience. So in case you don't want to know anything, come back to this review after you've seen the show or the first episode. Now, so as the name suggests, it is an Isekai series, and there has been a lot of discussions about that in the anime community as of late, that this is getting very redundant and we're seeing it too much over and over again. And my opinion about it has always been that long as the Isekai world is really well done and unique and all the other aspects are working, I don't really mind it. But the Japanese have a very different way of doing Isekai versus, let's say, the West. Let's say, for example, best examples from UK would be Harry Potter and Narnia. In these Isekai series, there's a lot of travel between back and forth the magical world and the real world, while in a lot of other isekais, such as Re:Zero, it is all happening, and a lot of the modern isekais especially, are all happening in the magical world. Maybe the beginning 20 minutes happen on the real world, and then they just suddenly die or get teleported right away into this magical world, kind of somewhat defeating the purpose here. But there are ways to kind of like, roll around it. Maybe you want to have a lot of these modern references, or maybe you want to have the experience where the new character is like totally in a new land, totally new setting, and he has to learn everything from the get-go. So there are ways to do Isekai differently, and Re:Zero is definitely of the anime style where there's no, aside from the flashbacks that probably happen on second season, there's nothing that, takes the main character, Subaru Natsuki, back to the real world. He is totally in this new fantasy world, basically, and that's where the setting is. Now, the source material is a light novel, and this first season adapts the first 9 volumes of it. And I think a lot of the art style on this anime is pretty great. The characters look pretty unique. You kind of would think that they would be from a manga. And they kind of stand out on their own and don't necessarily look very generic in that sense. And that's something that I always have a very keen eye on. And I like that when the characters kind of look different from what I've seen in the past. And I think in general, the White Fox Studios did a great job on animating this anime and like making all of these scenes look good in terms of the special effects and stuff like that. So I don't really have any complaints really animation wise regarding this anime. But now let's get into kind of like the meat and the gritty. So the story revolves around the main character, obviously, and the gimmick here is that every time he dies, he goes back to the so-called checkpoint. And it takes a bit of a time for the main character to understand what's going on. He doesn't really understand that the world has reset and the time has reset into the very original moment. Instead, it's like, he's like thinking that everybody has like lost their memories or something like that. And this is kind of like the gimmick where the character kind of gets better by changing his actions or the words on different characters that he meets on every single day, and tries to like reset and doing things over and over again. And this is a bit of a unique setting, and I don't think I've seen it before. As of right now, I can't even remember is there anything remotely similar to that. And that is the whole gimmick of this series. But that also creates this window of repetition where they show the same scenes and the same events happening, and it's like it's kind of redundant and gets tiresome at certain parts of certain arcs to see these things happen over and over again, because the main character dies and then he wants to reset everything and do things differently to save this person, that person, etc. And the story and the characters kind of like are like big part of it, obviously, but it's also about kind of like the melodramatic aspects of not going into mad and dealing with this psychotic trauma of seeing death over again, dying over again. And this is something that will be reflected a lot in this anime. And there is a lot of these, what I would say, very melodramatic emo moments at times where characters are just throwing, I don't want to call them tantrums, I just want to call them melodramatic scenes where they just go overly flip like that. And there's reasons for that, obviously, but it just goes a bit excessive for my taste. And I can see why other people like that, obviously, but for me, maybe a bit too much of it, or maybe it's not done on a, a stylish fashion, which I would enjoy. I think maybe certain animes like Tokyo Ghoul or Naruto just did a bit better job at that stuff. And now the OST is not exactly my thing. I wasn't really a fan of anything regarding it, or the OPs or the EDs, but it's not like overtly bad either or annoying, so I guess we're gonna give it a pass. The characters themselves are the main draw here. Our main character, Subaru, is, as I said, he's a bit melodramatic. He's very spontaneous, very kind of cocky in a way, and over energetic. And then suddenly he just flips out and, massively angry or frustrated, or just start crying and, feeling shitty for himself. And this is kind of like what the series is, a roller coaster of emotions between the main characters. You have also the main love interest, Amelia, and then you have kind of like another love interest, which is Rem. And Rem and Ram, these were obviously who are the best girl. Rem is probably more to my liking, but I think most majority people like Rem. That's why I chose the thumbnail. And it's kind of goes into, at some points it feels like, is it trying to be a fantasy anime, or is it trying to be some type of a triangle romance between these three characters? Or it's just kind of like, it's a bit like genre shifting type of a series. It's very bloody and gore at times. It gets brutal, but then again, that whole loses a lot of meaning due to the fact that, hey, the world is just gonna visit again once I die, so I'm just gonna like, it's just kind of like this sort of a hack, which just allows the main character to do what he wants. And that kind of defeats some of the purpose within the anime, in my opinion. And some people might like that mechanism. It might work in the beginning, but then you kind of like start to think about, like, are there any stakes here at all, due to the fact that, you have this sort of a backpedaling feature. And that kind of makes the character OP, while he's like really not really that powerful. I mean, he's pretty weak. But this is kind of like his getaway card of sorts. And it's probably going to be something that splits the, people between on that a lot. The progression of the story is pretty good. You're going to have the introduction arc, and then you have the mansion arc, which I didn't like at all. And then I think, things get to a lot more interesting once, more characters are introduced and the political elements kind of come in, and more of the bad guys are kind of also revealed, so to speak. And I watched a bit of the season 2 as well. It's okay. But I mean, animation wise, the acting, the story, all of these are above average. It's just that whole death mechanism thing is, I don't necessarily like it that much. And also one of the things that was kind of weird to me that in the first episode there's like a lot of these dynamics between humans and beasts, and then that factor is like totally forgotten. Like after that episode, like they just like try to like bring this sort of a setting that, oh, humans are one thing and then you have beasts and they don't really mingle together a lot, and then like, okay, let's forget this whole setting. And so when it comes to a lot of light novels or some generic fantasy shows, there's not exactly like a lot of very good built up hard magic systems. I should really do a video on soft magic versus hard magic some point on the channel, but I like hard magic systems, and I think this one has a lot of explanation on how certain things work. But there are a lot of other things which I don't think are as detailed as I would like them to be explored in this series. And a lot of things are obviously opened up as more time goes on and you kind of learn more about these things. So that's kind of good. But I don't think that it is this like super masterpiece. I think it has a lot to do with the kind of going with the whole moe factor. If you're looking for a battle shonen with a good story, or typical gore series, which it does have great gore, but it's I don't think it really delivers in that department. I think I just don't really care about the main character simping over two female characters a bit too much for my liking. I don't like this simp stuff. It can, at least not this excessive. So that was a bit of a turn off for me, but there's going to be a lot of people who have no problem with that. Actually, they're going to be loving it so much. But I mean, in the end of the day, I think it's okay anime. I think a lot of people are going to be liking it. It takes a bit of a time to kind of start off and grow on you. I wasn't necessarily like the most impressed by the pilot, which is, by the way, 40 minutes long. And I do kind of like the mystery element, though, of the dying, and there's kind of detective aspects as well. As I said, it's a kind of combination of many genre, but I think there are some inherent like power vacuums in this storytelling with this sort of a death mechanism where you revive every time and just feel like it's just kind of making certain things meaningless. And that's how I view it. Some people don't view it that way. And I think I'm pretty clear on that. But I still enjoyed it, and I'm still going to be watching Season 2 and following seasons. And I think the story and the world are interesting, and I think there's a lot more to be explored. And maybe that gets explored a lot more in upcoming seasons and Season 2 as it goes on. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on the next video. Make sure to subscribe and like, because that helps on the algorithm and makes my videos pop out on the searches. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.